we go. So I believe
Right.
we are going live. Hoping everybody is online. We're going to kick off now. So, welcome to the first episode of our new webinar series, At the Source. Today I'm joined by my TWA partner, Nigel Franklin, and our special guest, Kevin O'Neill of Sentinel and Breatholution. As the industry continues to accelerate and grow at pace, we have a responsibility to ensure we're evolving and adapting with it. At the core of the TWA, we've always been education and government. Today, we'll be exploring the person behind the protocol and why one size fits nobody. This is just as important as the technology itself, isn't it, Nigel?
It is, my love. And let's just pretend for a second we weren't all just ignoring Erin's dog scratching.
Thank
Scratching.
you. Did you hear him?
Yeah, you did. You did a good job. Yeah, no, true. Kevin, welcome, mate. Welcome. Welcome to our first edition of At the Source, and it's a good one. It's a good one to start because we always, Erin says, one of the reasons why she founded the Touchless Wellness Association was the lack of governance and order in the industry, right? And so when you have an industry that expands and evolves as rapidly as we have, um, then there are gaps in that evolution that I feel across the board. But safety, right, being primarily one of the fundamental ones. So tell us a little bit, because there's a lot to introduce to you. I mean, part of the thing that you are profoundly welcome to this podcast and this industry, mate. About time. But tell us a little bit about, if you can, about Breatholution and then how that went into also what you're launching now.
Yeah. And yeah, I was laughing. I was just chuckling away at the dog then. Never would have chosen that. Yeah, just at the right time.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys, for having me on and for for sort of taking me under your wing a bit, really. And it's exciting, And the reason I sort of set up Sentinel and we've created Sentinel is off the backdrop really of Breatholution, which I created in 2020. And since setting up Breatholution, I've probably taken over 4,000 people into cold rivers and lakes and reservoirs and cold plunges and ice baths, and I've done all that sort of did the Wim Hof stuff and breath work. I'm an oxygen advantage instructor and a Buteyko instructor, so I've been in the sort of wellness industry for 6 years, or certainly a certain part of it anyway.
Yeah.
But obviously always been really intrigued into the safety of it. Had some issues myself. I took somebody into the water who sadly passed away because she had a medical condition that she didn't know that she had, and it obviously it sparked off a different direction in the line of work that I was going in, and just sort of primarily focusing on the detail really. But not only that, just huge gaps like you just mentioned then, Nigel, huge gaps in the industry where it's not just safety, it's awareness and training and understanding physiology and anatomy, but also looking at every part of the industry through a trauma informed lens,
Yes.
which is super important, which we've obviously spoken into. Being not everybody is intuitive as the next person, but certainly training will help to improve that. And of course, Sentinel is a bit of a tool really, just to help us have a look who's coming through the door,
That's
rather
why.
than old wave of
Yeah,
forms.
that's why. I mean, that's why I think it's so timely, and that's why I said just so welcome, because I think with this evolution, and then we get these cycle of trends every year, and so the wellness. I think people have mistaken being well, feeling well, um, for clinical safety. Sometimes, when there's a tagline here, right? One size fits nobody, and that we're operating on the opposite model of that, where anybody can jump into it. Women in in menopause, it doesn't, like anybody, it doesn't matter physiologically, but anybody can jump into a cold plunge. So we thought, and then the time has told, and Wim Hof has some issues against him right now, and you know it's weird that we're in this kind of good place and bad place, right? The good place is, what a great time to be alive in the wellness industry. We are going through a major shift of innovation, pioneering, frontier exploration, and that's all great and exciting. But actually, we're doing it at the great cost of safety of people engaged in these things like that. People like me and Erin think up and go, "Oh, that would be a nice idea. Let's put it there," and we're doing that without these guidelines, because the assumption was cold plunges. Like, I'll throw cold plunges under a bus, but cold plunges, as they launched into the industry, were one size fits all.
Mm.
And as you've just said, with this sad story of the lady that passed away, it's evident that that's not the case. So, what is it with you, with Sentinel, as an extension of breathology, but with Sentinel, what is it that you guys are actually doing?
Yeah, and the thing is with Sentinel is it's ideally it's supposed it would be used on the day. It's to assess
Yeah,
people's mental, physical, and emotional state on the day, really, and it's just also asking participants to look at about what they're about to sort of step into, really
yeah,
take responsibility for their own health, and for their own comorbidities if there are any, and
yeah,
also the medications that they're taking, because a lot of the time people are filling in waivers in January and then we're going to the event in June. And in between those periods of time, they're going to the doctors, they're prescribing them antidepressants and antihistamines if it's spring, and painkillers. And a lot of these medications are a direct contraindication to sauna use or
yeah.
cold plunging or um, many other different types of cryotherapy, or IVs and things like that. So we just need to be careful that people are kind of being assessed nearer the time or ideally on the day. So that's why the questions on Sentinel, um, they can be altered to be sort of modality specific,
Yeah.
that are asking questions around what is it that you're about to do physically, mentally, and emotionally, and what could possibly be connected to this for you as an individual, and trying to get that as accurate as possible, so it doesn't just become an old-fashioned waiver where you're passing the buck with liability.
100%. Right? A waiver doesn't do anything. A waiver doesn't do anything to give any kind of precision outlay of what you should and shouldn't be doing. It just means that if you die in this hot tub, it's your fault, not mine. So, what does Sentinel do then that's different than that?
Yeah, so Sentinel is really aimed at changing people's ideas around intention as well. So if you're about to come into a practice, it's understanding what that practice is. It's giving you more information on how that practice is going to, potentially affect your physiology. And this, is why it's important that facilitators certainly have an underpinning knowledge of physiology and anatomy if they're going to open their doors up and allow people to dramatically change their physical state, within a short space of time before sort of leaving the safety of your space or your premises or your facility, or using your equipment,
Yeah,
that they're safe when they're doing it. So, and the thing is that as you mentioned, then the industry's changing, but social media is a big force behind that, and
yeah,
and this is why one size doesn't really fit everybody. It's all right, and I'm not sort of going to pick on Gary Brecker, but the likes of Mr. Brecker, and he's sort of coming up and saying that everybody can do this. Wim Hof, hey guys, everybody can jump in, everybody can do
absolutely.
this,
It's
but
also
they
the peer
can't.
pressure piece. People are saying stay in there for longer, you can do it, without understanding the backstory to it. So being able to give people the information as well, or understanding of their own body and why they shouldn't necessarily be in there for as long either, helps them to combat that peer pressure element of you must stay in longer than me.
But then and it's true, because
Sure.
even when I'm creating my projects, I always say to my clients, sadly, there's also there has to be an element of Instagrammability to this project, which is sad. But you're right that social media, things like cold plunges, they have become somewhat of a badge of honor, right? And so people are chasing the dopamine hit rather than being mindful of their health and well-being. So so there's a lot of, so cold plunges are that, right? So there are a lot of dimensions to that. It's a badge of honor, it's Instagrammable, da da da. And then you have the real work of it, which is therapeutic. And it's just, there's such a crossover between what is badge of honor, what is therapy. But then because it's a badge of honor, everybody's throwing themselves into it anyway without any real thought about what's going on with them on a physiological level. But then so people would then with Sentinel, people would then, they would come, the form is much more comprehensive than a waiver form.
Yeah, it's a screening tool really, as opposed to just a conventional form, because it's asking you and it's prompting you on questions about your emotional state as well, why you're there.
Yeah.
And of course, all those questions, they can all be tailored to the individual practice, and to the facility that's that's asking these people to come through the door. What we send out really are pilots, just for people to get an idea of what sort of questions could be asked, and the facilitator can ask as many questions as they want. We want to keep the Sentinel short because we don't want it too long, otherwise people kind of lose interest a little bit. And of course, people don't want to be putting on too much personal information. It's got to be relatively quick, but it's kind of pre-consultation really. Yeah. And of course, a lot of people are coming into this practice one-to-one, but there's a lot of group session stuff as well, really, where it wouldn't really quite fit the same. So I suppose, in terms of what Sentinel is doing, it's collecting information, it's changing people's intention, it's protecting the user, but it's also protecting the facilitator a little bit more as well, really.
Yeah, I was going to ask. Yeah, because then that has to do it has to do a lot, right, to the liability of the facilitator. But I'm sure like a waiver does that. I'm just, because then it would be then that the facilitator and that team have to be very acutely trained in contraindications. Because I think you and I talked about this before, right? Where out of all of the IVs I've ever had, there's only been one where someone actually noticed that I have asthma and said, you shouldn't, well, not probably, you should, we're not going to give you the IV today because you have asthma and there's a contraindication. And my response there was, I've had thousands of IVs, different IVs, but it was because nobody ever told me that probably I shouldn't do it. And that's, I'm a wellness guy, right? So I'm always in these environments, but there's never been a time. I've done it. I launched a place a couple of years ago that we had ice plunges there. And I was throwing journalists in there all day and night, just it's just about the breath. It's about the breath. But actually, these were men and women of various ages. And really, there should have been a lot more of a granular approach to their own safety than me just thinking it was a laugh and let's get them in there.
So Kevin, when we've been speaking about it, you've shown me actually the traffic light system, which I actually think is fantastic because you have the green, orange and red light. Could you talk us through how that works and applies?
Yeah, obviously we just have to come up with something that was quite simple, really. So obviously we've got the traffic light system, which is not, none of them are definite, and it's all just guidance, really. It's not, and it's not medical advice, but again, it's just it's making the user, the participant, just have a little bit more of a think, and it's giving them a bit of space and a bit of time to think, am I good for this today? Or do I need to maybe go and get a few checks done first? Do I need to just make sure my blood pressure is okay? And of course, that's gonna put some people off, especially facilitators, because they just want people to come through the door and pay money and leave. But in terms of your duty of care and your responsibility, having Sentinel there is just an extra layer of protection. And sometimes those people are going to come through your door, but they're going to come through a little bit later. But not only that, we've spoke a little bit into Sentinel and how it works, and the traffic light system works basically like a score system, and we're using World Health Organization data and NHS data using artificial intelligence just to collect as much information as possible. to make sure that we're asking the right questions and to make sure that we're giving the people the right information as regards how they might need to modify their participation on the day.
Yeah.
So as close as possible. So at least always kind of sitting on the side of caution as opposed to just giving everybody. There's only so many outcomes that will be green. You've got to be a certain age. You've got to have been not taking certain medications, contraindications, health conditions. It's quite difficult to get a green, but at least then we know then with the green we'll stick to safe levels on that as well. And then amber then is just reduced slightly, less times, less temperature. Temperatures reduced for these facilities that have got a choice of, 12 degrees, 10 degrees, 5 degrees. It's all about sort of making it safer and giving people more choice as well at these facilities. It's no use just having a 5-degree ice bath for everybody, because obviously you're not giving them choice. So you're increasing the risk.
Yeah. So the message isn't you can't do it. The message is you can do it. You can do it, but let's just do it in a way that's safe for you. Because that's what concerns me always. I mean, not just with cold plunges, but just with the speed with which the industry is evolving, and often it's not just evolving, but it's becoming more clinical, more longevity focused. And sometimes I worry that we have kind of given up our safety in favor of innovation sometimes. I mean, look, I mean, I'll do anything just to try it. But from a commercial perspective, I mean, having a safety net that is not like, it's something similar, right? To, in a strange way, 10 years ago, when somebody had cancer or was going through chemotherapy, they were from a transactional spa experience perspective, were untouchable. And so the conversation was then, we cannot touch you. Now, with the brilliant people like Christine Ann Clinton and Sue Harmsworth, people are really focused on this cancer care within a wellness environment, people with cancer and going through chemotherapy. So the conversation shifted from no, we can't touch you, to yes, we can, just let's do it safely. And it's the same thing here, right? And so in many ways, it's the same safety net that these cancer care for cancer and all of these organizations that train therapists to treat people with cancer safely. It's the same safety net then that you have created for cold plunges and breath work, right? It seems that it's not that the message is no, it's the message is, yeah, let's do it, but let's just find out a little bit about your physiology, about your health, and then let's create a way for you to do it safely. Still get the benefits of it, but just in a safer environment, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I suppose that's why one of the questions on all the Sentinel screening tools is, are you undergoing any treatment for cancer at the moment? And of course, you can either answer that truthfully or not answer it truthfully. And again, this is the thing with screening tools: are people honest on them? And we give them the option to be honest. A lot of them don't want to divulge their personal information, but if you're honest on it, it will give you an honest answer. And some certain cancer treatments, I think one of them is sulfonurolase, is a contraindication to heat. So you won't want to get into a sauna if you were taking that certain medication unless you were on reduced temperature or reduced time. So just assuming that, because you've seen some guy or some woman or some guy in the States that's all of a sudden said that they've got cancer and they go in the sauna every day, I mean, that's good for me then. So one size doesn't fit all, because you might be taking another medication with that. So it's just really getting people also to use the internet, use AI, use Google, have a look at your own medication, take responsibility for yourself, which takes a little bit of pressure then off the facilitator and the people holding space. And everybody's intention is a little bit more different, but also it makes the whole job safer. But people just assume that if you're going into a space, that the people in the space have got you and you're covered. And that is not the case, because they have no idea, a lot of them.
Yeah, look, I mean, when I create, I consulted for many years, as just an example, at Clinique La Paris in Switzerland. And we created a whole department who understood all the contraindications, who essentially kept every guest in the clinic safe. You can't have this treatment, you can't have this at this time because you had this at this time, and that's the contraindication, and so we have to put this there. So, whose primary job it was to keep the guests safe and juggle their schedules. And so, it's essentially, I feel like Sentinel almost, well, actually, let me ask you then this: who's ultimately responsible then? Is it the practitioner, the facilitator, the operator, or the guest?
Yeah, all of them. And,
Yeah,
and this is the thing, because everybody just assumes that the minute that you sign something is that you then become the responsibility of somebody else, and that's obviously not the case. And if anything happens or something happens to somebody, it goes to court, and that's quickly established, unless there's malpractice or something's been done wrong, and there's been a lack of duty of care, and that's provable. There's negligence. That's completely different. But this is why screening tools are a bit more open to facilitator and client relationship, because the Sentinel kind of draws a picture. When I go through the results now of Sentinel, one of my subscribers last month was about 250 submissions, and you can get a real picture of who people are and why they stop, and they're only partial submissions. Once they get to certain questions where they might be answering it and they won't be allowed to do it, they stop answering. It gives us some amazing feedback, but it also gives us, on the ones that get greens and ambers and reds, and you can see their age, you can see what they've got, you can see whereabouts they are, you can paint a bit of a picture as to what their health is like. And that's definitely going to help you to hold space for that individual, because it will help you as a facilitator then to ask certain questions. So I noticed that you answered this on here, and why is this? Where are you at with this? And this can help you to adjust temperatures. It can help you to adjust times. It can help you to signpost them onto other therapy. It's just a lot more. I don't know. It's just a lot more safer than just a normal tick box waiver form that a lot of the time they don't even see. But with Sentinel, it's collecting very specific information then that we can put together, and we can put it all through pie charts, and we can lay it all out for you like we did on our WhatsApp chat. And you can see exactly who's coming through the door. And I think there's nothing really out there that does that.
Exactly, that's it, right? Because you're creating the landscape. I mean, and the benchmark for that. Because I think the problem is right now, with all the innovations that we have, the line between a wellness innovation and a clinical innovation is quite blurred. Because if people are going to have such an adverse reaction to cold plunges, is that a wellness innovation, or should that be treated as wellness or clinical? If the contraindications are so strong, or can potentially be so strong, then why is cold plunge not clinical? And then why is it not governed by all of the framework of clinical interventions?
Sure, but obviously after the inquest with the situation that I had at Chesterfield, the coroner's report was sent to the health and safety executive, and they wanted really nothing to do with it. And the reason for that is because I don't really think you can regulate it quite the same way. It's a bit like regulating gyms. Because people drop dead in gymnasiums and HIIT classes. They must drop dead every week, from heart attacks and cardiac arrests and people having strokes. And the wellness industry attracts a lot of very unwell people.
I agree.
And this is the problem. It doesn't really attract young 27-year-old magazine cover bodied people. It attracts a lot of, with absolutely no offense intended, it attracts a lot of middle-aged women, menopausal women. And I've worked predominantly with women over the last 6 years, maybe 75% women. So the statistics that you're getting back now through Sentinel is it's still predominantly women that are coming through the door with heat and cold, and with breathwork, not so much men. So all this information is vital, really, to one, how you market your business, but also as to who's coming into the wellness industry and where are they going.
But
You know?
but then that's the benchmark, right? And then that's the language that you're creating, because in the same way that hygiene is a screening standard of healthcare, like these kind of things should be a screening standard for wellness. And you know, you basically painting on a blank canvas, and there's no other way to say it, right? There is nothing like this where people can engage, well, that people can understand that these wellness interventions are more dangerous than wellness interventions, but also can engage in it safely. You know, it's not, this isn't what, not you're not in a practice of exclusion, you're in a practice of safety. And how can we get people to get the benefits of these things, of which there are many, but do it with, you know, a better story on the other side rather than injury or death. I mean, really, I mean, laughing, but it's, you know, injury or death, you know.
Yeah.
I
I
think
think, hmm?
yeah, it's part of the beauty of the Sentinel as well is that when you say one size fits nobody, it applies to the facility as well, because everything can be tailored or adapted to the items that you have at the facility or that you're offering.
Yeah,
Whereas at the moment, most standard waivers are very just like, is it a sauna or is it a cold plunge? But maybe doesn't go into what are the temperatures of each of them, how long are people going to stay in those. So I think it gives you that flexibility to really, for the businesses, to really make it very bespoke to what they're offering as well.
and I would think looking forward to 5 years, I would think we're going to look back on these times and think, God, can you imagine when we didn't have these screenings to get into these things? I think we're going to understand this evolving landscape a lot more, obviously, but not just evolve it, but not just understand its evolution, but to understand how we can keep ourselves safe in it, right? I mean, it's just that there's no safety net for these things. There's no language. There's no benchmark, and that's why I say you've taken a blank canvas. You're painting on a blank canvas because it's there's no structure for this. There's no formation of it.
No.
So I think it
And
becomes really important.
Yeah, and it goes back also to, the TWA, why were we here? And it's because we saw such an explosion and such advancement of so many different technologies. Then we saw the facilities just throwing them all in there with so many different options that people were going in and basically, being overstimulated. And then we
Yeah.
entered into the whole stress paradox situation. So this is another way of being able to, strip it down a little bit more, create more bespoke protocols as well, and help people understand their own body rather than just going in and saying, I want to try all these different things.
yeah, that's the thing. And I think over the 6 years that I was taking people into cold water, I probably re-triggered hundreds of people. I probably re-traumatized quite a lot of people and didn't really know I was doing it because I was taking them straight into freezing cold water and they weren't ready. You know,
Yeah.
they were already having issues with unresolved trauma, or they were going through grief and they just weren't ready for it yet. It physically put them back into their past again. And, I just didn't really know what that looked like. But obviously now I know what that looks like. So it's 15 degrees because of where you are at the moment. And then we'll slowly but surely bring you down, let you observe rather than this reaction and this physical head down and this bracing that too cold water is making people do that are still sat in traumatized bodies.
Tell me
And
more.
this is sorry.
Sorry. So go ahead. Finish.
Yeah, and the thing is that I know I'm sort of looking predominantly at cold plunge because that's what I've been doing and saunas, but stress has a posture, it has a physical posture, and this is why I studied loads of videos on YouTube and social media. But this bracing and closing and head down is not they're not good physical positions to be in when you're trying to be well.
Yeah.
Okay, so 8 degrees will put you here if you've never done it before. 100%, I guarantee it'll put you here. But 10 degrees will put you here. And the difference is that the outcome for the therapy will be different because observation can happen and not reaction. Reaction is a bit like PTSD. It's mimicking the past. It's physical responses that are linked to the past? I know this is going off on a bit of a tangent.
No. It's actually it's good because I actually was going to ask you because when you talk about trauma responses, I think that's kind of fascinating to have an understanding of trauma as it relates to these environments. I was going to ask you about that anyway, because I mean, it is trauma of sorts, right? So, and that's not something that's not a word we ever throw around in the wellness arena. Um,
You know,
but there is a trauma response to it.
But it can be
yeah,
as simple as someone going into a float tank who suffers with claustrophobia, but we didn't breach that or broach that conversation with them, or understanding why, or what's their trigger. Is it the darkness? Is it just the closed environment?
yeah, they could have experienced some trauma in utero that would the body may keep the score on with that. And we just don't know, do we? But this is why screening beforehand may just change the intention slightly. If we just pre-warn people that this is what you're heading into, and maybe even like the thing with the LED mask on the face, if we just tell people first, this might make you feel a little bit claustrophobic at first. So if we just do it gradually, it would remove that kind of threat from happening, which changes the outcome for the use of the product. So the feedback then, from people using that product is, well, I was asked a series of questions with this Sentinel thing, and it made the use of the product much more effective because I wasn't scared. It explained how it might make me feel, and rather than this sudden, God, I felt so afraid and I felt anxious when I did this. This is what we want to avoid because that just creates another event for the human being.
But I think also with cold plunges, I mean, maybe this is the placebo effect, but with cold plunges, if you remove the flippancy of it and you say to people, look, we've got to fill out this because this is, this has potential to be quite a dangerous thing. The focus becomes less on the laughs and the friends and the Instagram post and more on the real therapy of it, right? I mean, just psychologically, I think.
Yeah,
You know,
and that's important, and that's why, as part of the Breathvolution method, and when I'm training students at the moment, the theory that you instill in people before they get into the code makes all the difference.
yeah,
And I think I said to you last time, Einstein said that the ability to see an object depends upon the theory you use.
yeah,
And certainly in terms of neuroplasticity, and intention, if we're going to go and use a stressor, we have to understand how the body gets stressed.
yeah.
It's no good just going in and getting stressed again. It's like, yeah, okay, I see
Yeah,
that.
you don't know why.
You've got to be able to witness your own shit.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Basically,
But yeah, no, but it's true though because it's. I think then it's the flippancy, right? We'll stay with cold plunges for now, but
yeah,
it's the flippancy of it, and it's a joke, but meanwhile people are getting injured because you know it's just when you have injuries and when you have lawsuits but still the flippancy of it overrides that, then then there has to be a messaging break. And I think what you're doing with Sentinel is providing a messaging break where it can be, look, put it on Instagram, have fun with your mates, but let's do it safely. And I think then that goes across the board. I mean, you're right, Aaron, with things like, isolation flotation, my favorite thing, by the way, with isolation flotation, there will always be, there are always contraindications for these things. And it's just how we create the framework where people feel supported, but allowed to actually still engage in it. And I think that's the point, because it's Sentinel isn't a process of no, it's a process of yeah, sure, let's do it, but let's just make sure you don't die in the process, right? It's what can be hurt from that.
It's almost bringing back in the human connection again, isn't it, to all of this? And whilst we're talking about touchless wellness technologies, we still need that human connection.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. This is the thing, and of course, obviously, no technology will override human connection because obviously that's vitally important. But if we look at it through a trauma-informed lens, look at the possibilities of what this participating in this therapy or event might mean, then we can definitely change people's intention and perspective of what's going to happen and where they sit in that environment, and what the outcome is going to be for them, how they might feel. And that will definitely improve the outcome, but obviously what's going on at the moment, people are just turning up at festivals. Hey guys,
I know
everybody
this is the thing.
into
Yeah.
the tent, everybody breathe, hyperventilating everybody, people are falling off chairs, they're going unconscious. It's just a complete, the pendulum's swinging in the wrong direction with it at the moment.
Where did you land on the word trauma for this? It's a weird question. Sorry, I'm just curious about it.
Yeah, and the thing is, with trauma informed, I think that means something different to everybody, obviously,
Yeah,
as well, because everybody's conscious experience of what trauma is completely different. So
absolutely.
sometimes you've got to be very careful using the word trauma,
Yeah.
because it can, the word itself, it can be be quite triggering for people. So apologies for anybody that's triggered by me using that word today. But what I mean is by a trauma informed lens, and the reason that I use trauma informed is because it's being able to identify that everybody's experience is completely different, and what might be comfortable for somebody to sit in might be very, very, very uncomfortable for somebody to sit in. And I often say to people on my courses, I say, look, the smell of cut grass can bring so much joy to somebody, but it can mean something very different for somebody else. So you've just got to be careful. You've got to be informed as to how you are when you're creating space for people, what you talk about, how you speak to people, and that we're not trying to convince people that they're removing trauma, because that's not what's happening.
Yeah.
We just have to be informed and not really plant seeds in people. That's not really what's happening potentially. It could be, but
So then what does it look like? Okay, so I am a spa manager and I have cold plunges and I want to bring in Sentinel. What does it look like? The training? What do you do from your side?
Well, I suppose what individual spa owners do in terms of their own training, in terms of people that are coming through the door, is up to them, really. 9 times out of 10, I imagine that most spa owners, they go through the physical safety protocols, but they don't look too deep into the trauma informed side of,
Yeah.
and most of the time, most spa owners, a lot of them, they don't even see their clients anyway, or their participants. They just open the doors and they welcome people in, and there's your sauna, there's
Yeah.
your towel, there's your little slippers, and there's your cold plunge, and
But
fill your boots. You've
but
signed the waiver, have you? And thanks a lot. So, you know, it's kind of open, really, because sometimes people are coming in groups. Sometimes people are coming in just for a bit of fun. Sometimes people are in their 20s. They're super fit, healthy, trying to recover from delayed onset of muscle soreness, from gym and exercise. People are coming into the industry for different reasons. What Sentinel is really there for is for the people that are coming into the industry that are not very well. It's just highlighting for them that it might be an issue to certain individuals in there. But in terms of the trauma informed side of it, is that we don't know. It's for individuals to really talk into the trauma informed side of it. So I suppose with Sentinel, it'd have to probably split off into different directions depending on what the facilitator was offering. So is it therapy that you're coming in? So is it mental and emotional therapy where it's guided from, or whether it's just a physical therapy that you're using it for? But unfortunately, for those that are just using it for the physical therapy, some of them can become very emotional when they go in the cold, specifically in the cold. And they're like,
but
well, I had no idea, why was I upset? So then you have to kind of be able to integrate them back into why they became upset, the possibilities of why they may have got upset, and to signpost them then onto somebody else.
who is then doing that training? Is it the responsibility of the spa? Because
Oh
because
yeah,
because after COVID, we all kind of expected our therapist to suddenly, out of nowhere, have emotional intelligence, right? With no more pay, with no more pay. so would you then, but do you then have, do you have a database of contraindications where, some where we can draw the information from? If I'm owning a spa and I bring in Sentinel, are you then sitting with essentially, are you then sitting with the therapist and explaining with them some of the contraindications for cold plunges, for example?
Yeah, and I suppose that would depend on the actual facility itself and what you're offering as well. So if you're just offering contrast therapy, you create your screening tool not to open up into that, because if you're a therapist, that's one thing. If you're just a cold plunge instructor and you're there to talk about safety, you kind of have to know a little bit about what happens if one of your participants or one of your clients becomes emotional or distressed. You need to know how to deal with that. It's no good just having a first aid qualification.
Yeah.
You kind of have to, these days, you kind of have to have a little bit more of a mental health
But
first aid.
that's what I'm saying. Let's say I'm a therapist. I'm working in a spa, and we have Sentinel, and someone says so I write down that I have asthma. Whose whose responsibility is it to teach the therapists that cold plunges and asthma don't go together? Is that something that Sentinel has a broad kind of platform of people who shouldn't and people who should go into the cold plunges?
Yeah, and of course, what we're asking AI to do is to literally dig out everything, every case where somebody's sort of fallen short after
Yeah.
being in a sauna, has had an asthma attack, has had respiratory problems, and it's identifying what is potentially red flag
Yeah.
for that modality, and that goes across the board. Whether it's breath work or yoga or
Yeah.
cryo or cambo or ayahuasca, whatever it is that you're
No.
delving into. Yeah, IVs. What is a contraindication? So yeah, we're having to update it all the time.
All the time. Yeah.
Yeah, because obviously things are changing, so the questions will have to change a bit sometimes as well. And of course, because Sentinel is quite new,
Yeah.
it's literally kind of evolving all the time in terms of the questions, especially in terms of menstrual cycles and whereabouts you are in your cycle as a female. Are you pregnant? And there's just so much has got to be in there, which is red flag, absolute no. You're going to get a red. You can still go in. That's on you. Okay, and for legal purposes, if you want
Yeah.
to go in and you want to risk it, you've signed to say that you're going to risk it. Go and fill your boots.
But we've given you the data now, because that's it. I mean, I mean, this is a pioneer, right? Pioneer. You're pioneering this. This isn't something that you're copying. You're creating this, and so you're right about you're going to have to update it as often as as often as you can, because information is coming out. These, I mean, I remember with cryotherapy in California, we had people dying in cryotherapy for the first kind of couple of years before it kind of people could understand it more, and then safety regulations were then written for it. But I feel like we're in that kind of space with a lot of these technologies where people are just saying, yes, this is longevity, or yes, this is good, let's do it. But there's no way of there's no knowing the contraindications because these are so new.
But there's
So
another
Yeah,
brilliant thing about this technology and this program, or however you want to describe it, Sentinel, is that the more people that adopt it and use it, the more data we have in order to
absolutely.
create things as we go along. And that's why it's so important.
Yeah, but that's it. I mean, this is when you're pioneering something. I mean, there's you're pioneering it. This is the road less traveled. So that's why I think something like this is incredibly exciting. It's probably stressful for you now because you're out in the front lines, building the framework, but it's
It's
yeah.
going to
just
be
so important.
It's going to be way more up to date than a waiver form that's printed out every 6 months or 12 months that maybe gets updated every 2 years or something, because it can continually be updated as the data keeps
Absolutely.
coming in. So it's almost live.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, if we do create an app and somebody's got a personal app, if they take medication, they can put it in there, and it will change the outcome. Then it might just give you an amber rather than a green because you've took some antihistamines or whatever, or you've taken some prescription medication, or or you're going through grief at the moment, it might just give you a different way to adjust your participation in the event. But at least then it's live and it's current,
Yeah.
and it's giving feedback as to where you are as a human on the day, really. And ideally that, we talk about David Lloyd and these big companies and the life leisure, these leisure facilities. Ideally, people are going on in the day, really, and just tap in. This is where I'm at today, blah blah blah,
Yeah.
blah, and then in we go. So it's a bit like continuous health assessment,
Yeah.
really.
It's even,
Ideally, that's where it would be for me.
yeah.
Yeah, and we're getting the more educated user these days, and even though they might be more educated and they might be taking more information in through all of their data collection, because that's what everybody's doing these days, isn't it? They're using all of
Yeah.
these technologies now to measure their HRVs and things. But now it's about getting them to understand how it correlates or translates back to this. And as it develops, as Sentinel develops, there might be some key diagnostic data that can then be dropped into people's personal um, information, which then would help them understand why they feel more stressed on that day when they've used the cold plunge, or why couldn't I stay in there for as long today? Well, actually, you've been really stressed and your body's tired, or you're coming down with something. It starts to help them to give them the tools to
And
understand their body better in a way.
but then because then it does
That
become like
helps.
cancer care in terms of wellness, because cancer care was all platformed itself on we are inclusive, not exclusive. And then this is the same format, right, where we're taking people understanding their physiological nature, or at least current landscape of it, and then we're saying we're not excluding you from anything. We're just saying let's do it, but let's do it the right way. And so then it's the same inclusion, which is at its heart wellness. All right. So question then, quick question, because we've got to wrap up. See Sentinel going across the board throughout the entire kind of longevity wellness landscape in other even if it's massage, even to a point. I mean, where does Sentinel stop, do you think, or does it in the next 5 years, let's say?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, yeah, we've not really looked at it like that, but I think, the limits are endless. And like I say, with the technology, but for anything, for massage, somebody putting their hands on your body can have a massive impact if you're not ready for it, or if it connects to the past in any way. So again, just assessment, individual assessment, or certain parts of the body that can't be touched. And I know a lot of people that do this, a lot of massage therapists, they're really quite stringent with their screening, and they're brilliant, but there's loads out there that are not.
Yeah,
So I think,
yeah. When I was a therapist, I was very stringent,
I
because
bet,
and
I
not
bet
because I was scared, because I wanted to understand how I could help the most. And so there
this is
was,
the thing, yeah.
yeah,
And if everybody was like that in the industry, unfortunately, most, I would say, are out there trying to cash in on mental and physical and emotional health, unfortunately. And even if those decided that they wanted to use Sentinel, it would still make their practice safer, even
yeah.
if their heart and empathy wasn't in it. It would
No,
still make the practice safer for the individual.
yeah. And I think this is a good example, right? If we can still be innovative, but we lead with, I mean, safety translates directly into care, right? Care into wellness. So yeah, I mean, we lead with these innovations in the industry because they're exciting and we need them. And
Yeah,
um, this is an industry full of pioneers, but we learn how to do it so that we limit the collateral damage, which is, you know, people who shouldn't be jumping into cold plunges jump into cold plunges because it's on Instagram and everyone's telling them it's fun, right? And you know,
exactly that. Yeah,
it just feels like the more clinical we get into the industry, um, the less we should be saying it's just wellness. It's fun, do you know what I mean? I think
yeah.
that. So
It's more than that. And I think, we've not really struck on it a lot today, but the data is going to be really important. that we get that from Sentinel, because I mean, literally, that's going to open everything up in the wellness industry. You know,
For
where's
sure.
everybody going? What's everybody doing? You know,
We
having
have you're,
female. You know,
you're creating profiles for these kind of interactions, which and a database that does not exist.
Not yet.
So
No.
no. So I mean, it's going to be, it's incredibly important what you're doing now, but there's a legacy in this as well, where, to create suddenly and timely, effective safety benchmarks for the industry for these kind of things. We've all been having a big party, and it's time that we kind of, put a fence around it a little bit and turn the music down slightly. So
Yeah.
all right.
So, Kevin, can you tell our listeners and viewers where they can find out more information about Sentinel if they're interested in what we've been talking about today?
Yeah, sure. Obviously, email inquiries there to hello@sentinelscreening.co.uk. And if you go to breatholution.com or breatholution.co.uk as well, there's a page there dedicated to Sentinel screening. You can look at how it works. You can try it out. You can try the pilot. Or you can just get in contact with us, and we'll try and see if we can set up a screening tool, with your logo on it and with your branding on it, so that you can get a feel of what it would look like for your business, and you can give us a bit of information if you wanted to trial it and see what you thought. But just ask the question, if you're unsure. And the thing is that we're building a website at the moment for Sentinel, and it's just not there yet. So it would just be a landing page, which is why it's still on my breatholution.com, breatholution.co.uk website. But yeah, it's exciting times. It's just a lot all at once, because people are wanting to use it. People are trying to subscribe, and we're trying to get used to the technology. And we can't just we've got to use multiple AI, because not all AI digs up the same information. They don't all use the same sources. So some AI will bring out red flags from over somewhere else, and they all bring different information in, which are helping us to tailor the questions to be as accurate and as safe as possible.
Well, look, as I said at the beginning of this, you are so welcome. It's no, mate, you're doing good work. It's good to put this kind of safety first parameter and have this conversation. That really, I mean, I think these are the conversations that ultimately, I mean, I don't think I'm being hyperbolic, but ultimately these are the things that save lives, right? So to put these parameters, these safety health parameters around these things, I think it's fantastic. Good job.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Look, I really appreciate that. I really do appreciate it. I mean, I'd love everybody over the age of 35 to go and get a 12-lead ECG before they did any cold or heat. It's not going to happen. So at least you can just try and make things a little bit safer. So
yeah. All right,
Brilliant.
Kevin, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. It's been great.
No, thank you so much for having us on board. We're super excited.
Yeah, no, it's been
this won't be the last people hear from Breatholution or Sentinel, or from you, Kevin. So we're looking to working together as we go further into this, and really helping to bring some governance to the touchless wellness arena.
Yeah, thanks for having us on board. Yeah, we're really grateful. Thank you so much.
Hey, our pleasure.
Brilliant. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and please do reach out if you want further information, and this will be put onto various channels so you can go back and listen to any of that information again.
Thanks for watching. Yeah, cheers. Thanks so much.